Um, well, Urmi, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's Friday on my end. I'm sure it's Friday for you as well. Are we on the same time zone?
I
I'm on
think
Eastern
so.
time.
Me
Okay.
too.
Awesome. Well, so let's just dive right in. So can you just tell me a little bit about yourself? What is your story?
Yeah, so my name is Urmi and I live in Montreal, so I live in Canada. And the way I like to always present myself to people is that I am Italian by birth, Bengali by blood, and Canadian by law. So I was born and raised in Italy from parents coming from Bangladesh. And I basically lived my whole life in Italy before I moved to Canada. And I currently work in the financial services industry. It's been quite some time, I want to say, probably 6 years. And when I think about it, I'm like, already, it has been 6 years that I'm working. And so I work in the financial services industry. And in my free time, I support a lot of causes such as women's empowerment, which is very, very close to my heart. And I have my own blog where I try to, educate people about, different things that I do. And I also have a YouTube channel too. So that's in a nutshell who I am.
Awesome. You just talked about like your blog, and I want to dive deep into that. So you're in the financial services sector. Let me start by asking you, do you like it?
I love it.
You love it? Okay.
Yes, I
Like
love it.
it's your passion?
Yes, I love it. Like it started from my from when I was actually taking my undergraduate. So when I was in my undergraduate, I was never in finance actually, never, never, never. Um, so I was never in finance. I used to be in this other major called international business, and I don't know
Mm,
why I was in this major, but I remember like when I would go to classes and stuff like that, I did not enjoy taking international business
right,
classes.
right.
And finance was actually my minor. So then I took a few courses and I was like, I'm still in love with this. I just made it my major.
Mm-hmm.
And it was love at first sight. Like I would go to my classes, I would listen to my professor. Like I enjoyed every single moment of it. Even when I would go to do my exam, it would make me so happy because I was like, oh, it's nice. It's like stimulating my brain. So
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoyed like studying finance. I really, really loved it. Like I was never tired of studying finance. And then after I graduated, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I miss it. Like, what am I gonna do after this? So then I did like I did another course, which is I think
Mm-hmm.
is very much specific to Canada. It's to if you want to like work in a bank, and so I did that one for a year, and then after that I enrolled into another program. So I was doing all this while I was working full time, and then I enrolled to another program called the CFA designation. So I was doing the CFA program. And and basically even when I was studying for that one, like it's a very hard like exam, it's a very hard program, but I remember thinking like I just love it. Like it doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
how hard it is, I just love studying for this. Like I just feel like it just challenges me every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working in the financial industry for 6 years. So yeah, I don't regret any of it.
That's awesome. So just to get it correct, it's the stimulation that you get from it that really makes you passionate about it, or is it
Yeah.
something more specific?
Yeah, and I think finance is so dynamic because there's so
Mm-hmm.
much always going on, like you learn about different companies, you learn about new companies, you learn about new things that come to the market. So it's like always changing. It's not like other subject where, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, like accounting, where it's just the same thing that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas finance is much more broad and it's much more rich. That's how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm. No pun intended with the rich right there. Okay, so let's dive deeper into your blog, like I said earlier. So I know on your blog you definitely talk about finance, you talk about women empowerment, like you mentioned, that's something that you're passionate about. You also go into personal stories and lifestyle. And there's a bunch of other stuff that I'm not remembering at the moment. So can you just walk me through your blog, like why you created it, what subjects are the most passionate to you that you like talking about?
Yeah, so I created my blog probably 2 years ago. It has not been that long.
Mm,
And it was just like, it was never in my plan, honestly. Like, I never had a plan of creating a blog. And then one day I was speaking to my sister, and then she goes like, "Oh, I have a blog." And I was like, "You have a blog?" And then I was like, okay, maybe I should just create one too. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, I guess she inspired me. So then I created this blog. And I remember feeling very much insecure about it because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, everyone will know about me. And I remember being shy about putting my picture. I was so not comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, I was like, I feel like I have so much knowledge that I want to share to the world. So then I went with it. So I created a blog, but it was a lot of like me getting out of this comfort zone because
Mm-hmm.
basically I never had a picture on it. I never said anything about me. And then one day, one person that I basically volunteer with, she was like, you know, if you never put your picture, if you never say your story,
Mm.
people will not relate with you and people want to see who's the person behind the blog. So then I was like, okay, you know what? She's probably right. That's how I feel about other people. So then I started to put my picture. I started to tell a little bit about my story. So it took
Mm.
a lot of courage for me to say to the world who I am.
Mm.
And now I have it for 2 years, and I basically talk about anything that happens in my life. So I talk
Mm.
about a little bit about, public speaking. I talk about a little bit of like lifestyle. So if you want to, do self-care, I give books recommendation, basically anything that I read, I just talk about it. I talk a lot about finance, and basically this blog, I created it mainly to target women. So I was like, you know
Mm.
what, I want to share who I am to other women so maybe they can do the same so that, they can grow personally by seeing what I do, and maybe hopefully it can be an inspiration. And so far, basically, I don't know, like I'm targeting women, and I feel like I'm always getting like men. So I don't know what's going on there, but it's open to
To
everyone.
everyone, right?
It's open to everyone, although I know like my blog literally says it's mainly for women and girls, but
Mm-hmm.
it's for everyone, and I don't want to discriminate or do gender stereotypes. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very much for everyone, but it is like a lot of this personal stuff that I do, I think it's much more relatable to other women.
Mm-hmm.
And so far the experience has been great, so I really really love it.
That's awesome. Well, talking about like, talking about yourself and your story to empower women, one of the things that you talked about was just kind of struggling with your identity, being Italian and being from Bengali. So, can you talk about that and how you were able to resolve that, or are you still on that journey trying to figure out like how you fit in into both cultures?
Yes, so basically it was a struggle. It was very much a struggle
Mhm.
for a lot of years since I was a kid because as I said, my whole life I lived in Italy, and my dad used to tell me that I was the first Bengali girl to be born in Italy. So, the pressure and the struggle that I felt because
Mhm.
I was like, there was no one like me at school. First of all, there were not that many immigrant kids. Forget about having someone that looked like me. So a
Mm.
lot of the time I had to integrate with my Italian friends, which is something that I'm still very grateful for. But it was hard for me to, make them understand why I wasn't able to do certain things, simple things that probably were normal for them, like going to the movies or going out for
Mhm.
ice cream. For me, it was not like that. It was just because my parents come from this very like conservative culture. So I just have to do what they told me to do. So when I was at school, I was always super conscious that, I'm not Italian because I don't look like them. But then when I was at home, I also felt the same that I was like, I think differently. I do think more like as a Western person.
Mhm.
So because of that, I always like struggle a lot with a lot of the things that my parents said, but I was okay to do whatever they told me because I was like, well, probably it's just me being wrong because I'm not thinking like them. And then it took me a couple of years, like a lot of years. And when I moved to Canada, I struggle a lot with it too. But Canada also helped me to find my identity. So basically, one example was that when I would go to university, people would ask me where I was from. And I struggled to answer that question because I was like, do I say I'm from Italy, or do I say I'm from Bangladesh?
Mhm.
And for instance, when I would say I'm from Italy, people would be like, hold on a second, but you do not look Italian. So then I had to spend like 10 minutes just explaining them my whole story. So then I was like, okay, next time I'm just gonna say I'm from Bangladesh. And when I would say I'm from Bangladesh, people questioned it because they were like, you know what, you have a strong Italian accent. So I was like, okay, fine. So then I had to explain the story. And then 2 years ago, I was like, you know what? I don't like when people tell me I am this or that. I'm just going to say that I'm Italian Bengali, and that's how I literally identify myself. I know that I'm not Italian by blood, but I do feel like this is like I embrace both, and both are so important for me, like so
Mhm.
important. Like I love speaking Italian. I love the Italian culture as much as I also love the Bengali one. And I don't like it when people question it. I don't like it when people say you're this or not, because they're it's like it's no one's place to say what I am. I
Mhm.
decide my own identity. So it took me a lot of years, and only 2 years ago I finally like came with this conclusion.
That's awesome. I think a lot of immigrant kids face that. I face that as well. I'm Nigerian American, and it's always being caught between two, and
Yeah.
always having to explain like you're not Nigerian enough, but you're also
Mm-hmm.
like not American enough. So
Yeah.
I totally get that struggle. And
Yeah.
you're right. Nobody can tell you who you are or how you're supposed to act or what mold or box you're supposed to fit in. So I 100% get that. Um, Something else that you talk about is this whole idea of fear
Uh-huh.
and why it's important to overcome fear, or why it's important to see fear as a friend,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a mentor. So, can you just talk about that a little bit? I never hear people talk about looking at fear as a friend or a mentor. I definitely hear people say like you're supposed to embrace fear
Uh-huh.
and not run away from it. But I do like how you put it into the friend mentor box. So I wanna hear more about how you got there.
So basically, it all started 2 years ago. It was the whole during the pandemic when we had so
Yeah,
much
it's the
time.
pandemic,
It's
right?
a pandemic,
Exactly.
So I was looking for some books about self-development, and one
Mhm.
particular focus was indeed with fear, because generally, like I am someone who's very fearful about many things in life. So
Mhm.
then I bought this book. The title was My Friend Fear. So the title was really what struck me the most. So I was like, you know what? Let me just buy this book and let me see what's in it. So I bought the book, and then there was this particular quotation that says, "Fear is the light that it's meant to guide us." And that's when it shifted my whole perspective about fear. So after reading the book and after doing a lot of self-reflection, I finally came to a conclusion about fear. So basically, how we feel about fear is that it usually comes from a place of uncertainty. But what's worse is that fear always controls our life, and we're not aware of it, because sometimes we do not do something because we're so afraid of it. And it comes from a place of uncertainty. We're scared of taking some actions, and fears literally it's after reading this book, I finally came to understand that really fear is there when you let it in, when you let this emotion to come in, when you feel this emotion, like every emotion, it's there to give you clarity. So it's there to like basically just opens you the door to different opportunities that you were never aware of. So it makes you curious about things. And that's how I started to see fear. And basically, for instance, I'm going to give you an example. Like I was so afraid of public speaking. And I think this is one of the biggest fear of many people. And I remember like this was something that I always wanted to overcome, but because I was so scared, I would never go and actually speak in public. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be courageous. I'm going to go to this public speaking class and just practice public speaking. And I remember when they called me on the stage to speak, oh my gosh, I was scared to death. I was so scared to death. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Okay, I'm just going to go there. And then, you know what? I'm just going to talk. And it doesn't matter what the outcome is. But you know what? The outcome was great, because after speaking for like 2 minutes, I felt great about myself. It made me so much more confident. And that's how I feel like fear is there. It's there to motivate you, it's there to guide you. He's there, or there, fear is there to really help you to also bring you to your true self, I feel like, because the more you're curious about things and the more you try things, you will just be closer to who you're meant to be. And that's how I see fear, is there just to be my ally, just to be there as my friend and not my enemy, as many people think of it. And I don't want fear to control my life. I just want fear to really guide me through what I like or what I do not like, basically. So that's how I see it now, and that's how I try to use it every day in my everyday life.
Yeah, no, that's such a great point. I found that with fear, sometimes, we inflate things in our head and we make situations like a lot more scary than what they actually are in reality. Like to your public speaking that you were talking about, like you said, once you got on stage and you started talking, it was not that bad and you had more confidence. So the fear was really just like in your mind of all the bad stuff that could happen if you were public speaking, and then you
Mm-hmm.
do it in real life and it's okay. Like there's no fires.
Yeah, yeah,
So I
exactly.
totally get that. Like, fear is something that if you channel it properly, it can really be an ally to overcoming a lot of things in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now that you have that tool in your back pocket, I'm sure like you still struggle with fear sometimes and other things.
Yeah, I do. And every day I would say I struggle
Yeah.
with it. But I try to like I do take a lot of time to think about everything that I want to do. And I think it always takes a lot of time, especially when you want to take action on things. But I always try to listen to my fear. I always try
Mm,
to listen to that voice that it's there, because I know that when I'm afraid of something, it's probably a good thing because maybe there is something good waiting for me out there. And I know that fear, it will help me to get out of my comfort zone because so far this is what it has been for me. So for instance, even creating my own blog or just having also my own YouTube channel, I was very scared of
mm,
creating my own YouTube channel. And it took me a couple of years just to be okay with it. And you know what? It took me a couple of years, but once my first video was up there and I spoke for the first time in front of a camera, I was so much aware that, everyone would see it. I was feeling good about it. And I was so glad that I did follow that voice that was inside of me. I was so glad because I feel like it made me also a more fulfilled person and more satisfied person, which is why I feel like fear is always going to be there to really hold your hand, like literally.
mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, speaking of YouTube, I've had a lot of fear about starting my own YouTube channel. I
oh,
keep talking about it, and I know I'm gonna do it eventually, but I'm petrified at the
uh-huh,
idea of it. So that's something that I'm personally trying to work through myself. Like, I took a break from the podcast and I'm working on season 4. Um, and one of the things I wanted to do during this break was start a YouTube channel, but
uh-huh,
it's been so scary for me.
uh-huh.
So I'm not where you are just yet, but you're definitely inspiring me to kind of just take that leap for sure.
I'm telling you, you will eventually get there. Like everyone has their own time. Like I had my own time, but I also had a lot of people believing in me because they were like, you know what, you have the personality to be there. And I think so do you. I think everyone has something to offer. Like what I can offer, you cannot offer, but what you can offer, I cannot offer. So you have to see it that way. And when you start seeing people like subscribing and commenting and being grateful that you shared whatever information you had, you know that you're doing good to the world. So that's how I like to see it. And it does make me really happy that I'm able to, impact more people more on a global level. And I'm happy that I'm able to share whatever I have instead of just keeping it to myself.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of impacting people, one of your favorite quotes is by Kate
Yeah.
Spade, which is "Leave a spark everywhere."
Yeah.
Can you just talk about like why that quote really resonates with you? I mean, I think I have an idea, but I would love to hear more um, about why that quote or mantra is important to you, because I do think it's important.
Yes. So I am someone who's very altruistic. So I do a lot of volunteering activities. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how I feel like this quote is so important to me because I do so many volunteering activities, my goal is always to help someone. You cannot help everyone, but you can help someone. And I think that's the key message. So like I'm part of like I don't know how many organizations, like so many,
Right, right.
but there is one in particular that I started a few years ago, and it was like after a moment that I was struggling personally, and I was like I need to like distract myself. So a couple of years ago, I would say 4 years ago, I started to volunteer in this nonprofit organization where you provide friendly visits to elderly people. And there is this one lady in particular, she's 92 years old. And basically, she always likes to have me over to have a tea with her.
Mm,
And I remember, so every time I go and visit her, like this is the quotation that I have in my mind. Like I like leave a sparkle wherever I go. And I think I did leave a sparkle in her life because she really, really enjoys like talking to me, having someone to share, her own story. And I like that feeling that, she's comfortable talking to me. She's comfortable sharing her knowledge.
mm-hmm.
And in everything that I do, I always want to leave a sparkle. I always want to leave an impact. So, for instance, I volunteer in this place. Then I used to volunteer at the children's hospital. So I would used to go and play with the kids. And I really, really like that. And I know that when I go there, the kids recognize me. So I know that I leave the sparkle there as well. Um, and then when the pandemic came, I was like, oh my gosh, how do I volunteer? So then I started to look for other ways to volunteer. So I started to like look for virtual opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I did were mainly writing articles for organizations that were targeting women and or girls. So I did that, and everyone that I met, they were very grateful with everything that I did. And I always think that if you want to leave a sparkle, you don't have to necessarily volunteer. It only takes one action, like literally one action, which could be just, smiling at someone, or, getting up and giving your seat at the bus to someone who's much older than you. Because everyone has a story. Everyone, is struggling with something. And, maybe we look so strong and we put, I would say, a mask to that everything is okay, but inside of us we have a war. We're fighting a war for because
Mm-hmm.
we have all our personal issues, but you can make someone's life better just by one action, and that's how I like to see it.
I love that. That kind of it's almost kind of like final words of wisdom, but I'm still gonna
Yeah.
ask you that. So just one last question is just you've talked about so many wonderful things, and you seem like such a wonderful person, and like from your career and like your blog and just wanting to give back and like you said, leave a spark. With whoever you come across, are there any other personal journeys that you're on or things you're trying to overcome slash accomplish in the near future?
I do have a lot of things in plan. Like this is how I am. Like as the days goes by, I just have one thing added to my to-do list. So I do have in plan to eventually write a book, which is it has been there for a long time in my plan. So I do want to write a book. I want to create two courses at least. So I want to create one about Italian, how to speak Italian, and the other one
Mm-hmm.
about finance. And I have been having in my mind to have my own podcast because a lot of people they feel like there's something in me where they see me as being a good host. I was like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what? I'll think about it. It's there in my mind. So when it's there in my mind, it means I have to eventually create
Yeah,
my own
exactly.
podcast. And what else do I have? And eventually, I also want to be able to go maybe to a Latin American country and teach English to a
Mm-hmm.
school. That's also another thing that I have in my mind. Ah, yes. And the last one, I want to do a TED Talk, which is why I'm part of the Toastmaster Club, where I get to practice my public speaking. It's because I eventually want to be able to speak in front of the crowd.
Mm-hmm. Oh, those
So
those are awesome. Those are awesome goals. Can I ask you what you want your book to be about?
I want to talk about basically about myself and
Mm-hmm.
finding your own identity when you're struggling between multiple cultures.
That's a good one. That's a
Yeah.
really, really good one. Well, thank you so much. Before I let you go, here at A Word to the Wise, I always ask all my guests for final words of wisdom. It could be about what we've been talking about, or it could be something general another mantra that you have that you keep in your back pocket.
So it is very much related to the previous one, but this
Mm-hmm.
one I don't know who said it, but it says like be someone's sunshine when their skies are gray.
Mm.
And this is so much more related to like leave a sparkle wherever you go. And basically like I really like this one because I usually like the way I like to see is that you just have to be kind to people, and kindness is it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. You just have to come from a place of genuinity, and as long as you're kind to people, you will make their life a bit better.
I
So,
love that. Thank you so much, Umi. Where can people find you?
so I have my YouTube channel. It's called Urmi Hossain. They can also connect with me on LinkedIn, and it's called Urmi Hossain. And then I have my own blog. It's called myways.ca.
Awesome. I'm going to put all of that in the show notes. Thank you again for stopping by the show.
Thank you.